March 13th. That was the first day of quarantine. For me, it was also supposed to be the first lacrosse game of my junior year season, and I was going to be starting varsity as a midfielder. I was so excited, and I could not wait. I'd been working so hard for months for this moment and this game, and it was going to be an amazing season, not only for myself, but my team. However, I received a text from my coach several hours before my game, saying that due to the coronavirus and the current pandemic, all sports would be canceled immediately and indefinitely. I just remember feeling my heart drop and refusing to accept what she had told me. Everything I'd been working towards for months, and my hopes for the season, were gone in an instant. No more practices, no more games, no more season. For the next few weeks, I rarely left my room, I barely ate, and all I did was sleep or cry. I know that's very dramatic, but everything I loved and the root of my identity had just been thrown out the window. This sad moment is what came to mind when Mr. Spector introduced our Capstone project. He asked us two main questions. What is it that you want? What is it that you genuinely love? I love sports, and I can't imagine doing anything in life that does not involve them or any career path without them. So when I lost sports, my mental health suffered. I've always struggled with my mental health to an extent, but with the arrival of Corona, I spiraled into a depression. Luckily for me, I have a great support system around me who was there to help me through the beginning of quarantine. My depression during the pandemic made me realize how much my mental health is tied to my involvement in athletics. When asked what I wanted to pursue for Capstone, I knew that I wanted to look into sports psychology. Through my Capstone, I want to explore sports psychology and how athletics can positively or negatively affect your mental health. Having struggled myself, I've always found that being active betters my mental state and puts me in a better mood. Sports are my outlet and my way to center myself, as it is for many people. So when considering my own loss, I realized I couldn't be the only one in this situation. Not everyone has the support system I do. So this idea is what led to sports psychology, as it would allow me to offer others the support I had received myself. Today, athletics are often seen as a path to personal glory, but I believe that they can also lead to God's glory. In 1 Timothy 4:8, it says, "For while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come." We gain values from athletics such as joy, self-discipline, and accomplishment that can translate into godly values. And by honoring our minds, we are honoring God, as it describes in 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20. "Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body." Society today puts a lot of pressure on athletes to be successful, which can negatively affect their mental health. But I believe that sports and exercise can also positively impact your mental health much more. I want to delve into this world of sports psychology to be able to help other struggling athletes and promote the benefits of sports psychology and my love for sports. I began my capstone by researching and defining what exactly sports psychology is. I wanted to make sure I understood what it was so that I could understand why it was important, so I could understand how to apply it. To begin my research, I reached out to Dr. Ricky Walker. She had done a preseason sports psychology workshop with my lacrosse team my sophomore year. She has a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in performance psychology, and a doctorate in counseling psychology. She's also CMPC certified, runs her own practice, and works with the USA ski and snowboard team. I feel like I hit the interview jackpot. She truly was a professional and expert in her field, and I was so excited to interview her for my project. One thing she said that really stood out to me is that sports psychology is not just about thinking positive all the time, which is what I had originally understood it to be. Instead, she described her job, saying, "One of the things for me that I work on with a lot of people is actually avoiding the idea of being positive and thinking more about being productive. And so what I try to figure out is for whatever athlete I'm working with, or even team that I'm working with, what will be the most productive for them." She pointed out how unnatural it would be to only be positive and happy all the time. She instead wants to promote productive thinking. Sometimes yelling at yourself to do better or push yourself to work harder is more beneficial than just accepting your performance and going with it. She also talked about the importance of destigmatizing mental health. She described her job in this way, saying, "You don't go to a strength coach because you are weak or broken. You go to them because you want to get stronger. In the same way, you don't go seek her help because there's something wrong with you. You seek her help because you want to have the competitive edge over your competitors in your mental health. Sports psychology is like an injury and prevention recovery program." Continuing with my research, I watched several webinars on the techniques and ideas used in sports psychology. This was a good introduction into what exactly sports psychologists actually use to help their patients become their best selves mentally. One webinar I watched was through the company Inspire Wellness. It was a presentation done by 3 different sports psychologists and counselors who taught me the specifics of sports psychology and actual methods they use. They said that mental health is like a spectrum, like the one on the screen behind me, and it's always fluctuating, which is completely normal. Sports psychologists' jobs is to meet their clients where they're at on the spectrum and help move them towards thriving mentally. They are to help them create stability on the spectrum, and they do so through muscle memory by training your brain. That way, if you slip back down the spectrum, you won't just have to lose any progress. You just have to work your way back to it through your muscle memory. They also talked about the importance of consistency within this spectrum. They'd rather you be slowly working your way towards thriving instead of being happy for a few days and sad for the rest. They also taught me 4 simple methods that are a great way to achieve a team thriving mentality. These are goal setting, imagery, mindfulness, and team cohesion. These are simple methods that you can help to start benefiting your team. I'll describe how I applied them later in my speech. For the importance of my speech, after researching, I wanted to understand why exactly mental strength is so important, just as physical strength is important. So I conducted several interviews. My first was with Mrs. Farnham. When I asked Mr. Spector and Mr. Schultz who I should interview, they suggested her. I was really confused at first, because she's a TLC teacher. What would she know about sports psychology? But then after talking to her, I realized that she gets to see firsthand how athletics affect those with special needs and disabilities. This was a completely different view on sports psychology and mental health that I never would have even thought about. I never stopped to think how sports psychology affects different groups of people. During our conversation, she kept bringing up the idea of community and inclusion. Whether students played on a varsity team or a unified team, they were part of something. And isn't that what everybody wants? To be included. Sports also gives them a sense of accomplishment, whether scoring or just making the team, which is honestly the same for all athletes. She had an interesting point when she said, the Special Olympics and even the National Sports Center for the Disabled, those organizations are here because sports are important to your health, not just physical, but also mental, and feeling like you can do something. I think she really hit the nail on the head there with that statement. Sports have been adapted for all capabilities because they are so crucial for your health, both mental and physical. Community, inclusion, and accomplishment are all key factors in your mental health. I'm so glad I got to interview her because she gave me a great insight into sports psychology regarding those with different capabilities and gave me a whole new perspective on sports psychology's importance. My next interview was with Dr. Catherine Ames. She owns the company Through the Game, which hosted the sports psychology workshop I did this winter with my lacrosse team. I interviewed her to get a better understanding on the importance of sports psychology, specifically pertaining to athletes. She is specifically trained to work with student athletes and does so every day. During our conversation, she gave me a great insight into the importance of sports psychology, especially for students. She works closely with them every day as a certified and professional counselor. I really appreciated her view on mental health because it is very relevant to me being a student athlete myself. One particular thing she said was the importance of balance between 3 specific methods. She described them explaining, I feel like life is just this balance between those concepts, acknowledgement, awareness, and movement. So we're like aware of what's happening, we acknowledge it saying, yes, this is a part of my journey, and then the movement piece is how am I going to proceed? What do I do with what I know? She also pointed out how you can't just get stuck on one of these things, or you fall into this really bad cycle that is not at all beneficial for your mental health. You can't just keep pushing and moving and going forward, or just keep acknowledging what's happening to you without doing anything about it. It's a balance. This again changed my perspective on sports psychology, and related back to the sports psychology webinar on the fluctuation of mental health. She also pointed out the unnecessary stigma around mental health that makes her job that much more important for students. She said it's like fixing a broken arm. It's not weird to fix something that's broken, it's actually necessary. The same goes for your mental health. If it's broken, it needs to be fixed. She and Dr. Walker both explained the importance of destigmatizing mental health, and I agree. Mental health is again like physical health and requires the same injury prevention and recovery. After my research of what sports psychology is and why it is important, I wanted to apply it somehow. I've been applying my new knowledge in my current sports seasons, both individually and as a team. It has been very cool to learn new things and be able to apply them straight away. It makes them that much more important and relevant to me. I also applied them during our mental health course that we took a few weeks ago. In taking the mental health course, I learned more about mental health in general and how I can better apply it to sports. I learned how to approach someone with a mental struggle and how to handle it as a student and a teenager, as there's not much you can do if you're not a certified professional. What you can do is look, ask, listen, help, and be there. First, you have to look for signs of a mental struggle. Then you have to ask that person if they need help or if they're okay. And you have to listen to their response and respect it even if they say no. Unless you continue to see signs, then you have to seek out help on their behalf. And then you have to be there for them through that struggle as a friend and as their supporter. These were tools I have used or will use and put into practice when looking out for both my classmates and my teammates. With my lacrosse team this year, I was able to apply the 4 methods I learned about in my sports psychology webinar. For imagery, we got together at the beginning of the season to discuss where we saw ourselves and where we wanted to see ourselves go this season. Then for goal setting, we set specific goals to get ourselves where we wanted to go. We kind of set out a game plan for our growth this year. For mindfulness, every few days we do what is called a pulse check. We will go around the circle and ask where everybody's at on a scale from 1 to 10, and that way 1 being the worst and 10 being the best. And that way we can be mindful of how people are feeling that day, whether to encourage them more or give them more space. For team cohesion, we mostly just hang out as a team and team bond. But we also use these other 3 methods to help us create a trust and understanding of one another. After applying these methods, I have seen my team better themselves, both mentally and physically, and our attitude is so much better. Being able to see firsthand how a team's mentality impacts their performance has been so cool, and I'm excited to keep applying it and see how we grow. The last thing I'd like to leave you with are 2 important and helpful acronyms that can be applied to everyday situations. There we go. The first one is E plus R equals O. Event plus reaction equals outcome. Whatever event happens to you, your response to it determines the outcome of that situation, whether it be a bad call from a ref or a missed shot. Either you get a second chance or a red card, which is why being a good sport is so important. You can only control yourself, and that is how you can control the situations around you and help benefit your team. The second thing I learned is BRAVE. It stands for breathe, recognize, I am statements, visualize, and energy. This can help you overcome any fear or doubt or anxiety that you are feeling. I actually did this before my speech today. It is a great pre-game mental warm-up, just like you would warm up your body before a game. The first is to breathe and collect yourself, and just think and get yourself in a space to recognize. Then you recognize what is causing you so much anxiety, whether it's missing the shot or letting down your team. Then you get back your confidence from your I am statements, saying I am going to make the shot or I am not going to let down my team. Then you have to visualize it. And this is the weird part of psychology. You just think about it. You have to actually walk yourself through that success of seeing yourself make that shot and be there for your team. Through my capstone, I wanted to explore sports psychology because it is so close to home for me. I really believe in the importance of mentally preventing and recovering from injuries. Through studying sports psychology, I learned that mental health is a spectrum, and it's okay to fluctuate between it. I also learned that it's more important to be productive in your thinking than positive. This is key in moving along the spectrum. I even learned some tips and tricks, like E plus R equals O and BRAVE. Through my research, it became apparent to me why sports psychologists want to destigmatize mental health so much. Mental strength, injury, and overall health is just as important as their physical counterparts. If athletes can begin to train their brains like they do their bodies, they can improve their overall performance and get that edge over their competition. I want to show others the benefits of athletics and their role in creating a positive mentality. I want to be able to destigmatize mental health regarding sports. I hope to enhance athletes' performances through sports psychology and be able to show everyone how to positively use sports to benefit themselves. I hope my study of sports psychologists will help many other athletes and students. Thank you.